And so, nourishing the almighty yes of the heart to make an allegiance with love. Somebody left me a message the other day saying, oh, I'm really wrapped up in all the politics that are happening, and I'm really concerned about what's gonna be happening in the future. And do you know what my Canada might look like in 10 years from now? Do you want to know? And I said, no. My job, my work is to call the ones that are ready to not be making an allegiance with fear and not be investing in stories of a future that isn't a reality and doesn't exist and is actually being created out of our own consciousness. My job, my work is to be living this reality and inviting any companions that are ready, willing, courageous, and called in the heart by the knowing of this truth to gather and to, in our gathering, really be a reverberant field that is not making an allegiance with fear and possibilities of a future, but actually realizing what is true. And so when I receive a message like that, it brings such a passion in my heart for what is true, because there are so many that are pulled into the frequency of fear and the stories, and none of it is a reality. As I often say, you vote love in every moment, and that is all that is needed to realize that you're never ever touched by anything that is happening in the play of the world. But we're living in an incredible, potent time right now where we're being so deeply invited to make our allegiance with truth, to really live this reality, to really reveal to the divine the truth of what the heart really knows. So many of us have just lost contact with the divine reality and knowing of our own heart. And we've spent our lives learning ways to try to fit in. All of us have done this in some way. But ultimately, we are wired to know our divinity. We are wired to live this reality. And we are wired to be the change. We're wired to live as love. And we're completely equipped. The consciousness that we are made of, the light that we are made of, and all of our systems are created so that we have this possibility to come to presence and align with the truth of the heart, and to keep aligning. And whenever we are in alignment with the presence of being, the presence field, whenever we are aligned with the truth of our heart, we're in a frequency which is constantly refining our systems, bringing our systems upgrades and refinements so that we remember at a multidimensional level the truth of who we are, and we live this, and we really become a beacon for this, a light for the world, we could say, on the surface of life. It's shocking to me how many beings in this world are just so intensely pulled and committed to the fear frequency and the story. And yet there's also a knowing that consciousness and the evolution of human consciousness is where it is right now. And we are pioneers. We are way showers. We are at the frontier, at the edge of what is possible. And that is why it is so important to keep aligning and to keep gathering. Because every time we gather, every time we confirm the almighty yes of the heart to love and to freedom, and in a way that is not driven in any of the old paradigms that are concerned with belief and belonging, but that we're using purely our own autonomous connection to Source, that we are connecting through our own presence to the one field. And there's such an incredible potency to what we are and actually what we can achieve. And so to live this reality and to keep refining in all of the ways that keep us away from this truth and in the frequency of fear. And ultimately, the most simple way to see how we make our allegiance with fear is when we are in fear, right? When we are making ourselves wrong, when we are making life wrong, when we're in resistance, when we feel that sense of contraction, that life is using itself as a way of guiding us, showing us, and giving us markers and messages that are a constant invitation to deepen into the revelation of the heart, to make our allegiance and our identity in God and glory. That what is so important is to gather in this frequency and not to divide. Not to create islands, but to really gather in the frequency of truth, to really recognize the truth of the heart and that oneness. And this whole unfolding is such a profound unfolding. And there's so many ways to speak of it. But ultimately, we're evolving in consciousness as one field of consciousness. And we're evolving to recognize the true essence nature, the wide awake, aware, conscious being that is the one true nature. And we're coming to a continued flow of evolution that brings us out of the delusion of separation and division and limitation, and brings us into a sense of a unified field and a consciousness that is unified, one unified field of consciousness that is referring to itself and experiencing itself. But ultimately, as we come to wholeness, that field stops referring to itself and it actually only knows itself as one. And that sense is a sense of being no one, nothing here. And yet we're so concerned with filling our boots with being somebody. And so when we speak about flowering in our uniqueness, we're not speaking about flowering as a someone. We're speaking about flowering as a divine expression of wholeness. And in order to flower as a divine expression of wholeness, we actually have to awaken out of the sense of being a divided someone. This is not about creating glorified personas or ideas about ourselves that are our new personas and new identities. This is about leaving it all behind, like really leaving it all behind. Everything that we identify with, leaving it behind so that our identity is actually in God. And to have our identity in God is not to be identified with a set of teachings that talks about God. It's not to be identified with ideas of what that is. It's actually to leave it all behind and to open to a frequency of our own depth of knowing so that we can truly embody what wholeness is. That it's so easy to settle on the journey. It's so easy to think, okay, this is far enough. This feels good. This feels okay. I'm okay with just staying here and just being a someone that is here. But being here as a someone that feels like this is good enough will not change the trajectory for the human realm. It will just repeat and reincarnate, and it will just continue the cycle of evolution. We're here for something that is so profound. We're here to awaken from the dream of separation. And our hearts know this. Our hearts know the truth of the love that we are. Our hearts know the truth of the light that we are, and that we are here to be beacons, emissaries of light. So as the words come, it is just about attuning to the frequency of what the heart knows. What is possible in a human life is so far beyond what even the most open mind can ever imagine. We are all playing it so small, so very small. Let us not be content with playing it small. Let us not be content with ideas of what this is about, and let us actually be committed to finding out what this is truly about. Let us rise out of the frequency of constant backwards and forwards, up and down, right and wrong, the play of opposites, the play of karma, the play of cause and effect. And let us actually open to the possibility of our whole systems refining and our consciousness refining so that we can truly, truly live this. So just to notice in your own heart, what are you up to that is really in your own evolution saying yes in the most radical and profound way? How are you moving in your life every day to really say yes to God and glory? And where are you compromising? Right? Just to have a little moment of noticing. And it's not about making ourselves wrong. It's not about judging. It's about elevating and amplifying and illuminating, seeing where we are really saying yes and where we are compromising, where we are dulling our light, where we are dimming our light. And just in a really illuminating way that is so loving, that we just open to see, wow, this is what I'm really called to. This is what is inspiring for me. This is what brings me alive. And this is what I'm saying yes to. And this is what I'm willing to say yes to. And okay, yeah, these are the places where I compromise, just to illuminate and bring light and love to these places. To really claim our identity in God and glory, to really claim the fullness of what is possible, of what we're actually truly here for. Are you really willing? Is your heart really longing? as Rumi said, half-heartedness does not reach majesty, right? We have to be completely intoxicated with the grace and the glory and the mystical revelation in order to reach majesty, in order to reach the majesty of what we're truly here for. To really let love devour all of the ways that we divide and limit ourselves, to be so swallowed by love that there's nothing left that defines us in a worldly context. That we're not divided by our gender, we're not divided by the roles, we're not divided by religious or any kind of orientation, spiritual orientation. We're not divided by the clubs or collectives that we belong to, that we're not divided by anything or limited by anything, that we're actually truly part of a collective wholeness that is one love, one peace, right? Just like Bob Marley was speaking of, right? One love, one heart, one peace. That we're moving together as one, that we're evolving together as one, and we're sharing this, we're joining in this, and we're supporting each other deeply and profoundly in this. And that ultimately there's an autonomy in it which means that we cannot get anything from the external world, that we cannot be given anything from the external that will deepen our unfolding. Only through being with ourselves, only through deepening our own connection to source and divine nourishment will we receive the bliss nectar that creates ever deepening refinement. Everything that life is offering is an opportunity. Life knows what is true and whole. And so life is constantly moving as an intelligence, as a field that is offering us opportunities, our own consciousness creating, right, what we see. And so, if we see challenge happening in the world, that macro imaging is offering us an opportunity to see the micro frequencies of consciousness. Ultimately, what are we creating from? What is the frequency that we are creating from? Are we creating from fear and division? Or are we creating from courage and love and openness? Are we creating from a love that is undivided? Are we creating from the frequency of divine light and wholeness? Are we creating a true and deep experience of living this reality? Mm-hmm. So as I often say, we start with celebration. I like to start with celebration because part of living in the frequency of fear is about starting with the problems and trying to solve them, right? But starting with a problem and trying to solve it is fear begetting fear, is moving in the world of the mind or psychology or limitation. Whereas when we start with celebration, we start with upliftment. We start with remembering the great glorious revelation of the mystical heart. We start by remembering the frequency of God and glory and the truth of who we are. The other day, the revelation I had was, wow, I'm kind of like a preacher of love these days, right? I'm not a teacher of anything. There's nothing to teach. It's about uplifting the frequency, because when the frequency is uplifted, we're actually resonant as a field of reverberation that is in the moment, in this moment, is more service to the whole collective of the human realm than any do-gooder, anything that we could ever imagine. A field of beings that are resonating truly at the frequency of love is offering such a profound nourishment to the whole. And so when we uplift our own frequency and we remember the truth of who we are, and then as a field we amplify that frequency and we enliven the field, it's like we amplify the possibility that we have to look upon our own lives and not see from a perspective of lack and problem and trying to resolve within the world of limitation, but we look upon the life and we see that, are we going to be dulled and dragged into the frequencies of fear, or are we going to be the light that illuminates and uplifts and actually repatterns the frequency? This is the great glory of gathering and uplifting, and there's no bypassing or transcending away from truth. It's actually about bringing the transcendent, absolute glory of love and light of the divine into our very own heart, shining as that, as a beacon, beaming that light into our own life, beaming that light onto the surface of life, being a beaming ray of sunshine and brilliance in the lives of all of the beings that are in the constellations of companionship around you, and being an embodiment, an emanation of love, a being that is embodying love. In a way, all of us are here to embody love and to be light. We're here for illumination, right? That's what enlightenment is. We're here to be the light of our true essence nature. We're here to be the light, to live as light, frequency, resonance in the finest, most incredible ways. We're here to live in joy and exuberant freedom beyond the wildest imaginations. And so here, the invitation isn't to look upon the life and, oh, look upon your problems and try to work out how to solve them. It's how to bring this frequency of celebration and joy and enlivening to actually call forth from your heart's true knowing what is possible in the infinite field for this life. To start really feeling and sensing, how do I want to spend these days? What kind of frequency do I want to be living at? How do I want to feel in my life in every moment? How joyful, how creative and exuberant and alive do I want to feel in every moment? Not to be like, oh yeah, but I haven't got enough for that, or that's just not possible for me, or not to be limited by all the ways the mind thinks that you could be limited, but actually call forth from the infinite field of divine possibility things that you wouldn't imagine, to actually create a kind of map of feeling, sensing possibilities, to call it forward and to find a way to document, creatively document, what does that life, what does your most brilliant, glorious life lived in yes feel like? Maybe you have flashes of what it looks like. And instead of limiting yourself according to what you think is possible, call forward what you never dreamed of daring to bring forward, and just opening yourself to what is beyond. That when we start with celebration and we open to the feeling sense of God and glory, we start celebrating the grace and the gifts that we have and the possible ways of living this light, the infinite ways of living this light, the infinite ways that a human can flower and blossom and fruit and be a beacon, an emissary, a messenger, a herald, right, on the surface of life, to be an embodiment of love, to really love, be love, to reveal love. What does that really mean? Just to be in open, wild contemplation at the feeling, sensing level, and not at the mental level that limits and boxes and contains everything. Don't let anything hold you back from the rushing river of grace carrying you into possibilities beyond. That we're at a most potent time in the evolution of humanity where we really get to see that so much of humanity is ready to sink with the ship of fear. And yet, there is an incredible growing field of light ray beams, right, that are doing this work all over the planet in their own unique ways, that are absolutely sincerely committed to purifying, refining, and really connecting to the wellspring of source, to really reconnecting to the divine, opening to divine guidance, divine nourishments, to divine sustenance, and really restoring connection to what God and glory truly is. So in that, in a way, that we have to go beyond the limitations that we're holding around conceptualizations of God and glory that have been held by misunderstanding and misunderstandings through allegiance to religion and spiritual traditions that might have shut down the possibility of really opening, that this is a time to, we could even say to really within our deep innermost being and heart, make allegiance and find our connection to source, to the divine. And the words don't matter, but to find out what God and glory is, and to really, really make sure that we make an allegiance, right? Maybe you've heard this expression that says, find God in the summer of your life, so God is there for the winter, right, of your life. And what that is, of course, referring to is, in a way, find that allegiance young enough in your life so that when you're in your later years of life and heading towards the dropping of the body, that you have this connection. But we could take that deeper and make it more profound, right? Because as we open multidimensionally, let us realize that this human life is for finding this connection and letting the summer of the life be while the divine is offering us this possibility. And the winter could be while the fear frequency of the human realm is trying to tell us that everything is, moving in a really disastrous direction, so that we're not making allegiance with the fear frequencies, because that's what fear wants. And there's so many ways that so many beings of light are letting themselves, of course, be capsized and be pulled into the fear frequencies that are asking us to pitch ourselves against each other and divide and separate, and to create tribal allegiances and pitch one against the other. That will never, ever bring us to the love frequency. And we could say that is the winter of a human life. But the truth is, and this part you have to find within the realms of your deepest heart's knowing, is that there is a contingent that is living this reality and living in the mystical revelation, that are not playing those games, that are absolutely untouched and uninvolved in those frequencies of fear and discordance on the worldly sense, and that it's possible to live in a dimension frequency of being absolutely untouched, and that we're in this process of moving, so that we're moving to this frequency of reality, and that it's a seamless dance where we are, the fear is calling us, we're used to that, but we're being asked to respond at such a deep, deep level. And as we respond at this really deep level, we make our own connection to Source that knows that whatever happens on the surface of life, that we're living in the eternal reality and nothing can touch us, right? That we don't need the means of the modern world, right? Shall we go into some deeper invitations? Let's open some things up here. I can feel that it's time. And these are the ways where we could say we have the capacity to communicate. We could say it's telepathically, but it's even more refined than that. We have the capability and the possibility to be able to communicate fully in the realms of consciousness, in the realms of glorious light, where we're not actually dependent and reliant upon seeming modern day technology, right? We are an intelligence that is more intelligent than artificial intelligence. We are an intelligence, and if we don't kowtow to giving our power and allow our intelligence to be dulled, we will continue to refine our intelligence and start to explore the ways that the things that we notice that are the clues are like the synchronicities, the ways that we know things, or that we know that we actually we're having these communications, and that we start to explore these communications and refine our intelligence by drinking the divine bliss nectar and connecting into the divine field, connecting into the silence, and recognizing the ways of communicating and being together in silence, in communication. And we're going to maybe at times start having fun with just really testing and evolving these possibilities. There's so much that we're wired for that is not reliant upon, and yet within the play of the modern world, we are the innovation, right? The structures and systems that have taken the consciousness that are being is able to recognize and systemize it, like box it, right? So we're all these incredible pods, laws of nature, of uniquely wired divine intelligence. We've learned to dull that down, not use our intuitive knowing, not live at the level of gift and glory and illumined realization of our true nature. We've learned to live in the shadows. We've learned to live in our shadow nature. And we've learned to connect to our shadow nature in the frequency of fear. And if we continue to think that being a human is connecting at shadow, in the shadow realm, and problem solving, we totally miss the fullness of what our consciousness actually has the capacity for. And in this lifetime, this is why it's such an exciting and potent time to be alive, is because we've lived through a sense of not realizing that, and we're opening to the absolute wow of what is possible, right? So again, as these words come, it's to enliven and bring online and amplify your intuitive knowing and really bring alive the intuitive capacity, so that we're living more at this level of realizing that we are the innovation, we are the intelligence, when we actually open to the fuller capacity of our consciousness and we refine our consciousness and we stop making an allegiance to living at the shadow level, that we actually start to refine not only our consciousness, but multidimensionally, we actually refine our physicality. We, my friends, actually within our lifetimes have the possibility of living healthy and happy, probably to around 120, 130 years, right? That might seem like, whoa there, Billy Horse. That can't be possible. But it actually is possible if we use the science, the true science of rejuvenation, to allow our systems to be aligned with nature and God and glory. We, even at what seems like kind of ripe old ages, we have the possibility of refining our systems and living not like decrepit and, limited and in pain, but actually living a longer, really vital life, so that we have this increased capacity in our human life to really be here for the work that we're here for. And God and glory, when we're in allegiance with God and glory will bring online the rejuvenation multidimensionally of our systems and our consciousness and the capacities to be able to be here, to do the work that we're here to do. But if we're making an allegiance with fear and we're limiting ourselves and we're just kind of, just playing out, like playing the smallness, then yes, our lives will be cut off in order to be recycled, right? But we have these possibilities, and we have the possibility for our intelligence to refine. And that's why gathering and coming together and really exploring what is possible and evolving as a kind of, as a unified field where we recognize that we're attuning and we're practicing our attunements, and we're refining our intelligence, and we're practicing being free of the seeming modern world, so that we're not living in fear and dependence, that we're in this evolutionary process where we recognize what we actually have the possibility of in this lifetime, and that we connect to God and glory, and we start living in these frequencies and what I'm seeing now is kind of auric fields. I'm seeing high frequency light fields around us, that we're actually living in these kind of auric fields. And the auric fields, as we gather and join the auric fields, starts to be light transmission on the surface of life that is transmitting and transmuting for the collective, which is then creating an atmosphere where more of the beings that are being capsized into the fear frequency will actually be more courageous and willing to step out of their comfort zone and be just focused upon in the shadow realms, and start actually opening to the intelligence and the uniqueness and living the uniqueness as a unified field, because living our uniqueness is the essential part of living and being an expression of the divine. As we open to the unified field, we're opening to the possibility of blossoming as an expression of the divine and blossoming as an expression of our uniqueness. So in a way, we could say to be yourself is the greatest offering. And to be yourself is, yes, to open to the one field of the self, the being, the presence field, the transcendent field, to transcend the mind of limitation, and yet to embody that transcendent field and to allow the laws of nature to live and blossom uniquely. So this is where we then start to live connected to our intuitive knowing, and we start shining as the unique light frequency that we're here to be, and we start sharing our gifts, and we start sharing our light at a frequency that we came here for, and we start aligning to recognize the heart sankalpa, which is what the heart actually knows we're here for. So when there's an invitation to come into this sense of like, what do you feel like what would be your most glorious, most profound divine life? Like if you had no limitations and you just really open to just start envisaging and feeling and seeing. And when I say seeing, I mean seeing as the seer, like opening to the intuitive knowing, where you're calling forth what is actually already here as a living reality, and you're pulling yourself out of the frequency of the shadow into the frequency of the field that's unified, and you're starting to feel in the unified field a certain courage and willingness to blossom and to be yourself, but because you know that you're connected to source, that you are connected to source, and you're not reliant upon anything external, that your connection to source is the wellspring of opening to the fullness of the capacity of intelligence, the field of intelligence. And here we then start practicing, okay, what is possible here? How do we join and commune here? And how do we start realizing that we are a field of intelligence that is true innovation, right? Let's pause. Let's just be here and just notice the grace of what we're opening to, the grace of what our hearts is calling for, is hungry for, opening to what the deepest frequency of our consciousness already knows. That what a profound possibility to gather and to really open, to join at this frequency field where we are amplifying this frequency, we're purifying and refining, and we're uplifting ourselves and recognizing our connection to source, to divine guidance and support, and we're joining together as a field in the one identity in God and glory, as a field of light, the Christ light, we could call this. We're joining as a field of Christ light. And we're actually realizing what that Christ light, what the message has been, which is to gather in this light, to gather in the one name, the one glory, and join and to be carried into a kind of salvation that humanity in the frequency of fear will never experience, right? That's the arc. That's you know, that's, no, we're the arc, right? That's the fear frequency, and that's the capsizing of the truth of who we are. And in a way, this living reality is the arc. It's like coming on board and really recognizing that there's this possibility to open to something more profound than has ever been realized. And that when we connect to source, our own source connection, we're being resourced from source. Our intelligence is online, and we are the innovation. We are the field of infinite possibility, and nothing of the seeming world can capsize that. And if this is what we vote for, if this is where our vote is, right? If our vote is truly with love, and that's not saying, don't vote if your heart is caught. It's not saying that. It's saying vote love first and then be moved in whatever way feels true, right? But let the true activism be truly coming home to your heart.